You ready?
Yeah.
You ready? All right, hold on. Here we go.
What's going on, everyone? It's the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle alongside Alex Miller and Zach Taylor of WTAW. Later, Robert Cessna will join us in our second segment, but for now, you're stuck with us. Guys, what's going on?
It's going, man.
Yeah.
It's kind of cooler outside. I wouldn't say it's cool, but it's cooler.
Is it though?
I always enjoy this kind of skybox view we get of you. For those of you who aren't watching on the video, Zach is kind of like, it's kind of this hovering pylon cam.
Yeah, it's the ESPN3 version, or the ESPN Ocho version, I guess.
There you go.
I don't even know what that is. No, don't do that.
Does Alex even know what ESPN3 is? Was that before your time?
I know what ESPN3 is. Come on.
ESPN3 is still around. What are you talking about?
No, it's ESPN.
The
Ocho? It's Watch ESPN.
Oh, Watch ESPN. That's what
it's
it is.
The same thing.
In case you want this somehow ridiculous angle to watch the game from the entire time.
All right, Travis, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about A&M football, of course, because it's football season. A&M beat Kent State 41-10 last week. They're heading to Denver to take on the Buffs in Empower Field in Denver. Zach, you've been to Denver a few times.
Yeah, I've been outside the stadium.
Where's some tasty places you've eaten in Denver?
Oh, gosh. Really from a food standpoint, I mean, we kind of went in and out of Denver. I went with my dad a couple of years ago. We didn't spend just a whole heck of a lot of time downtown, really. We went
to the ball game, though, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Coors Field, and so we got to try out the food there. And then we went to the Coors Brewery, which is in Golden. So we really didn't do a lot of stuff downtown. So honestly, I don't have a lot of recommendations for you. I've heard the Grizzly Rose is the place to go party, right? Or at least that's where a lot of the Texas country guys go.
I went to Denver for my buddy's weddings, like right out of college, so like 10 years ago, and went to the Coors Brewery for like a pre-bachelor party kind of thing. And it was my buddy and all of his friends from Nebraska who he played baseball with, and they were just dead set on getting a giant, those like coolers you see at the gas station that look like the can of whatever that they are selling inside the container. It's one of those, but Keystone Light. And so we rented a really fancy hotel in downtown Denver, and we're just pushing the Keystone Light cooler through the hallways, trying to raid ice machines to fill it up for the evening. Buckled it into the front seat of the van. It was great. Anyway,
it was like another member of the party.
It really was. So, Zach, let's start with you. Observations from the Kent State win. What were your pluses? What were your minuses from what you saw from A&M's first showing of the season?
There was a lot of rust, and that was kind of to be expected. Some pluses. Caleb Chapman looks like he's doing pretty well. Broke away for that 50-plus yard catch, so that was good. Haynes King showed a lot of promise. I wouldn't say that he had a great game. I don't think you can ever throw 3 interceptions and have a great game, but I think Aggie fans got a taste of what he's capable of. And I just mentioned that 50-plus yard pass. I mean, he put great touch on that ball. He made some really good throws. He did try and force one of those picks. He did try to force it in there. The other two ended up getting tipped. Isaiah Spiller and Devon Achane are going to be 2 forces to be reckoned with. I don't care who they're going to be playing. I think everybody knew that coming in, but Achane getting more involved in the ball game now than he was last year. And I really think those 2 guys going in a rotation and rotating out, it's really going to be beneficial for the run game. The offensive line, it's hard to tell this early on, and I think you kind of take it with a grain of salt because they went up against Kent State. Overall, I would probably give them a B if we're doing grades. I know I didn't do any for the other 2, but there were times where you could see that pocket starting to collapse a little bit around Haynes. And, yeah, he got rid of the ball quickly. I think he only got sacked 1 time, if I'm not mistaken, maybe twice. There was a blown blocking assignment on that 4th and short at midfield. So that's when they ended up turning turnover on down. So offensive line was okay. I tell you, the big question mark to me is the run defense, because 220 plus yards on the ground the Kent State. And I realized it didn't look like that much until you go back and you see the stats and you think about some big runs that they were able to pull off. And I mean, that without a doubt was A&M's strength last season. They had only averaged teams only averaged 92 yards against this run defense. That was never supposed to be a question mark, right? Nobody was ever supposed to say, well, where's the run stoppage here for this Aggie defense? But they did have some issues against Kent State. You wonder how that's going to look against teams like Colorado, who really like to run the ball, have some misdirection there. And going forward, obviously the SEC, you got a ton of good running backs. So could that possibly be a question mark moving forward? I don't know. We'll see. Yes, you have a question.
Oh no, I'm just cheering
Raise
you
your
on. I kind
hand.
of realized, and I'm now playing with the reactions on Zoom,
Okay.
and I realized that I can give you. It's like around the horn.
Around the horn,
Yeah, I can give you points
all
and
short of the
horns
buzzer
and
that you can give me. Ding, ding, ding,
yeah.
ding, ding. No, no.
Anyway, now I can't get this thing to go away. Alex, what were your takes from the game?
Yeah, I think Zach nailed him. You know, a lot of promise from Haynes King. He definitely looked pretty natural, pretty confident back there. And Jimbo said it too. Even after making some of those mistakes, he continued to throw some of those risky passes and try and get into some tight windows there. And really his demeanor just didn't change. And you know, I think that if you're A&M, you gotta like that. You gotta like that your freshman or redshirt freshman quarterback, excuse me, in his first start, even when he faced adversity, still went out there, still had confidence in himself and with the other guys on the field. Yeah, and to the run defense, I wonder how much of that's indicative of the way A&M was playing. Kent State would spread the field really wide with those four wide sets, sometimes in an empty look. And for a lot of the game, A&M played that dime coverage. So, linebacker is a position of strength. Linebacker was a position of strength last year. I think Buddy Johnson was a big reason why A&M was so good at stopping the run. I mean, he led the team in tackles, was really good at filling those gaps, senior leader. But when you only got one linebacker right there, I mean, it would make sense why, a safety or a nickel is making contact 6-7 yards downfield instead of maybe 2 or 3. So, I'm curious, how Colorado seems like a team that's going to run the ball more. What kind of alignments are they going to have on offense? And, does A&M shift more back toward that standard 4-2-5 look that Elko kind of normally rolls with there?
I would think so. I think, like we were saying, a lot of the issues with and Jimbo kind of mentioned this as well on Monday. A lot of the issues with the high run totals was more schematic. They were out there in a dime with one linebacker the whole time. The linebacker was a spy. The error that was made there was actually being overly aggressive, not necessarily holding their position and pushing the runner into other unblocked defenders. And so, yeah, you get back to that base 4-2-5, have two linebackers back there. I think that'll help solve that problem. Colorado is a team that's going to run the ball a lot more. They have a freshman quarterback. It's not going to be the same kind of. I mean, Kent State was a decent offense last year, and they brought back a lot of pieces, and they only put up. This is my other thing. They only put up 118 passing yards against A&M, and that was passing the ball, throwing the ball is what they were going to do. So good on the defensive secondary, especially without Miles Jones, being able to keep that at bay. They kind of sold out on the pass a little bit defensively, which gave them the run. I just don't think that's necessarily going to move up. I was decently impressed with the offensive line too. I think that, yeah, there was 2 holding calls, and actually surprisingly, both holding calls were on their 2 more veteran players, Jameer Johnson and Kenyon Green, in the game. And Kenyon Green actually ended up still getting SEC offensive lineman of the week, even with a holding call. So I think that you didn't hear a lot from the offensive line. There wasn't really necessarily anything brought up other than those 2 holding calls. And that's kind of what you need from an offensive line, especially one that's replacing 4 guys from last year. So I will be really interested to see how they go up against the defensive front at Colorado, and see if they is still as much as advertised against a little bit stouter defensive front. Let's delve a little bit further in. I know, Zach, you brought it up first, but the thing that everybody really was curious about and wanting to see is Haynes King. The guys that Devon A. Chain said was when they're running sprints, he's right up there next to him. He's electric. He has the legs. We all knew he was going to be able to run. And there was that one play, I believe it was at the second or third quarter, where he rolled out one way, reversed field, came back the other way, picked up 14 yards and a first down, and Kyle Field went nuts. And it was a very exciting play. I think we were expecting one or two of those this season. How did you feel the pass game was?
Uh, Kind of going back to what I said. I mean, you saw some touch from him. I think he's got plenty of arm to play in the SEC. I'm not going to say he's got the strongest arm out there. I think Calzada has a better arm than Haynes King does, but that doesn't always make the quarterback. Um, like we said, he looked poised. He looked like he was knew what he was doing. It
Mhm.
wasn't a deer caught in the headlights type of look. He went out there. He was able to run the offense. Jalen Wademeyer even told us, "Hey, he came to me in the huddle and said, why don't you try this? Why don't you try running this route or moving up a little bit in the way that you're lining up, and then I can hit you. You'll be a little bit more open in that situation." So that really impressed Jalen. I think winning the guys over in the huddle, and it seems at least at what we've seen that he's done that. And yeah, I think being a quarterback, and not to always make things a baseball analogy here, but it's a little bit like being a pitcher and giving up a home run whenever you throw an interception as a QB, right? You can learn from it. You can figure out what you did wrong. Okay, well, I made this pitch here. Next time I need to come back this way. Well, that can be applied the same way as throwing a pick, but you also have to have a short memory. And it was good to see A&M try and stretch the field out. And that had been something that they had not really done in the last couple of seasons. It seems like it's something that Jimbo Fisher is ready to commit to, is willing to commit to. He wants them to do that. And Haynes had a couple of those. Like, I go back to that 50-plus yarder. The interceptions that one, I mean, he stared, I believe it was to Wademeyer. He was trying to feed it through a couple of defenders, and he stared him down and chucked it right into the breadbasket of a defender. So that's something that he's going to have to learn to do, because you might get away with that the high school ranks, not college. The other two, you could say, well, the quarterback is always going to get the blame of that, but in a lot of ways, you can say that was just bad luck with the tip at the line. And then you also had Wannemeyer tipping the ball up, and it went off a couple of people before it got up. I got picked, that other one. So, I mean, that really is what first games are for, right? Knocking the rust off whenever you're not playing another Power Five opponent and you're playing a team that you're expected to beat, like they did against Kent State. And he definitely had to get used to things, but I think in front of that crowd and everything else, I think he did pretty well.
Yeah, I think that we talked to Jimbo today on the SEC teleconference, and he basically said that on those two tipped ones, the right decision was made. He made the right read. The throw was just a little bit off, not in the right window, and so he was happy with the decision making. The accuracy is something that can come, and I kind of tend to agree there. Alex, what do you see?
Yeah, yeah. Haynes, like I said, pretty natural back there. You liked what you saw when he made a mistake, came back out, still going after it. How about the speed? We saw that one player. He runs to the A&M sideline, looks like he's about to get tackled, runs all the way around, and then was able to get the first down. So, we've heard about this speed, we've heard about this athleticism, and then you finally get to see it on the field. That really adds a extra dimension to A&M's offense and what they're able to do with him. At times Kellen could run, but it seemed like Kellen just didn't really have that breakaway speed. Haynes might actually have that. I think that might be able to take A&M's quarterback position to the next level. Um, and yeah, you hear from Jalen Wademeyer on Monday, and he's saying, Haynes is coming to the sideline. He's already coaching up, talking with guys, discussing, hey, I saw this, and Travis, we talked about it afterward. You see Jimbo hearing that from a reporter, and he kind of perks his eyes and in his mouth with a smile. I'm sure for a coach like him, he's happy to hear something like that, that his quarterback's already taken initiative in that regard.
Yeah. The two passes that stood out for me, other than that, well, three really. The first one is I think maybe one of the best passes he had of the game was actually the one that Anais Smith dropped there on his seventh throw, second drive. He went 6 for 6 through the first drive of the game. Had that one that he threw a strike on that kind of post route right up the middle of Anais, and Anais actually dropped it. It was a great throw, right over the middle, and really impressive. The next one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember, at least recently, Kellen Mond making a throw like this. And it was on that third and long, I believe in the third quarter, where King was flushed out to the right and hit Weidermeyer on a pass that he dove for and got it, but it was a key first down get there later in the game. I don't remember Kellen throwing on the run that much. Am I wrong there?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean,
Especially later in his career, in the career.
yeah, he did. I mean, he made plays out of the pocket, but yeah, now that you mention it, as far as play action passes or just rolling out and trying to find a guy across the middle, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of that. Um, there's those things are complicated. I'm not saying that Kellen can't make those throws. He might have just chosen not to try and stay more in the pocket. And another thing too is he might not have had to make those throws at least last year with an offensive line that was
That's
keeping him
true.
upright all the time.
That's
So
true.
if you have that kind of pocket, why would you have to ever roll out?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a versatility that is it's nice to see spectating, but you don't know what led up to being able having to make that play, a little bit. The last one, of course, is then the was it 53 yarder to Caleb Chapman over the top. The accuracy on that deep ball and being able to stretch the defense is something that A&M hasn't demonstrated very much in the last couple of seasons. And not only having the vertical threat of Caleb Chapman, but being able to have the freshman quarterback drop it in there when he got past the defense is pretty huge. Those are the three throws that stood out to me.
Yeah,
Alex,
I agree with you.
you got anything else, Alex?
I think you hit it. And yeah, so
I lost count of my shuffle here. You had already actually answered that question, so I forgot where we were
You're the
in the
third. You're the
turn.
last in
Uh-huh,
line.
yeah, yeah. So Colorado this weekend. What I know we got some questions answered. We got to see what Haynes King was able to do. We got to see what this offensive line was able to do. What are you interested in seeing? What questions do you still have that need to be answered against what will be a little bit stiffer competition, Power Five competition?
I'm interested to see will Miles Jones be back. I know that Jimbo is answering some questions today. He was back at practice yesterday. I think he makes a world of difference in that secondary. We didn't really touch much on the secondary's play against Kent State, but it was pretty obvious Brian George was getting picked on quite a bit. So having Miles Jones back there at the corner position will be huge, I think, for A&M moving forward. Healthy. He needs to be healthy when you bring him out there. Ken Haynes progress. I mean, that's what you want to see from a young player, right? You want to see him getting better and better each and every game. This is still a non-conference game. It's still a game in which you're pretty heavily favored in it. Can A&M answer the bell? Can A&M perform the way that they need to? And this is an early road test. Yeah, it's in Denver, but Boulder is a suburb of Denver, so it's not like Colorado. They're in their own backyard here. There will be lots of Aggie fans there, no doubt, but it's not the same as say going to Dallas against Arkansas at Jerry World. It's a little bit different. So basically going on the road, facing what could be a hostile environment. Will A&M be able to answer the call? Will they be able to take care of business? Because again, you're the fifth ranked team in the country, right? You're not supposed to be having issues with teams that really aren't. I wouldn't say Colorado's not on the radar, but I mean, they've got a freshman quarterback. They've had a lot of turnover. They got a pretty solid running game, but overall, they're a team that A&M should be able to handle if you're the fifth ranked team in the country, right? So we'll see come Saturday.
one thing I'm still interested in is what does A&M have at linebacker? We talked about how they played a lot of dime package last week. I'm curious to see how having a two-man rotation in there instead of maybe just one. We saw a lot of Edgerrin Cooper, saw some Aaron Hansford, some Andre White, but how does that position really work out for the Aggies? And like Zach said, I'm curious to see Miles Jones return. I'm curious to see how they use Michael Clemens. as he's coming back from his suspension. And yeah, I'm curious to see what A&M's going to do against a team that's Power Five and is going to run the ball. Um, so yeah, and hey, is Ralphie going to run? Is Ralphie going to run? That is the question.
Well, that's something we'll ask in the next segment, but I'll close out with this. I'm actually interested in, and this might spark a little bit further discussion, but today in the SEC teleconference, Jimbo Fisher was asked about some of the secondary receivers like Damon Demas, Moose Muhammad, and you can't put the name Damon Demas on Twitter without getting 200 likes because he's the most popular guy on the A&M football team for reasons that, I mean, I can understand, but I also kind of can't understand. I don't, not to say that there's any reason to necessarily see these guys, because the guys who were the first teamers were doing a great job catching the ball and moving the chains. But do you feel like there is an issue with needing to get those guys some more playing time to keep them happy? I know we're not in that locker room, we don't know, but what's your thought on why this guy is so popular, and are we going to see him anytime soon?
Well, go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
When Damon came in to A&M, I mean, he was the guy. He was the vocal leader of that recruiting class. He was the five-star athlete. He had all the trouble trying to play his senior season, wasn't able to play when he transferred. UIL denied him eligibility. Um, we've seen the tape of him doing the flips and being athletic and catching those crazy passes in high school. Unfortunately, the college level is just a big jump. And, missing a full season of tackle football, that's hard. And, Damon's a pretty skinny guy too. It seems like he's gotten a lot bigger over a year, but he was also hurt for a while. He's sidelined with a foot injury. So it takes time to heal. Takes time. We've seen it takes time for guys to learn this offense that Jimbo Fisher runs and really become successful at it. I mean, Kellen Mond, it was really that third year where he really took off in that offense. And like you said, Travis, they have guys on the perimeter, Caleb Chapman, Chase Lane. They would have had Hezekiah Jones had he not gotten hurt in preseason practice. That they're pretty consistent, solid, proven guys that you're gonna have to beat in practice. And um, we saw Damon in the fourth quarter. But it's kind of interesting how he continues to be brought up um, when they have guys like Caleb Chapman and Chase Lane making plays. Um, I guess we'll see what will happen. But yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts on the whole Damon Demas situation.
Zach, do you want to see more Demas?
Well, I would love to see what he can do. I mean, he sparingly played last year, and again, I don't think it's a thing where Jimbo is actively trying to keep him off the field. He's been dealing with injury at least so far this season, and so people see the physical attributes. They saw everything that he did in high school. You know how it is with recruiting and fandom. I mean, they see a kid coming in; he's always going to be the next big star, right? So people blow up this idea in their mind of this is going to be the difference maker. This will be the kid that finally is able just to put this program on the map. And I'm not saying that one, the A&M's not on the map. It is. And then two, I'm not saying that Damon Demas could not be that kind of player in college. But dealing with learning with this offense, and as Alex mentioned, being out of football, of tackle football for an entire year or more, I mean, that there's something to be said for that. And then coming into college, having to learn this very expansive offense that Jimbo Fisher has. And then, of course, staying healthy. And that's been the issue, I think, this year. Up until now, everybody has raved about just his work ethic and everything else that he's done and how far he's come from learning the playbook and all the intricacies that go along with the pro offense. Yeah, you would love to see him out there. But at this point, I mean, you got guys like Chase Lane, Jalen Wademeyer. You've got Caleb Chapman, as we talked about, who right now looks to be that deep threat guy and very well could be the premier receiver that folks want Damon Demas to be. Well, Caleb Chapman very well could be that guy. We just weren't able to see it last year because he got injured early on. So it's a good situation to have if you've got so many cooks in the kitchen that it's hard to fit everybody in. Not everybody's going to be able to bake their bread, but the bread just it smells so good from that's being baked
Someone's
by the
hungry.
cooks and the chicken. Well, yeah, I had a pretty big lunch, but I'm always hungry. That being said, that being said, yeah, no, you'd love to see what he can do. You'd love to see what Moose Muhammad could do. Yul Keith Brown has been talked about a lot this offseason. Love to see what he can do. There's not a lack of talent at wide receivers, just a lack of experience. And how it's all going to shake out, we'll see going forward. But again, going back to kind of the idea of having this recruit who is going to be the next big thing, and how do you keep him happy? How do you keep him on campus? Because obviously he's going to be the all-star that everybody thinks he's going to be. That's fans. People blow up these guys in their minds and think that they are going to be the next big thing. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Not saying either way for Devon, but we'll see how it shakes out.
I agree. I think that mostly where my question and comment goes from is you look at what they did at linebacker. They had, especially with just one linebacker, they started with Edrin Cooper. They had Aaron Hansford in there. They had Andre White in there. There was a rotation there. They had the rotation at running back with Isaiah Spiller, with Devon Achane, with Ernest Crownover coming in, even doing some stuff in there as well. Curious to see how much rotation they'll have on the offensive, at wide receiver. And but also if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because they did a really good job, the starters out there. So just always a fun and fascinating exercise to just put Damon Demas's name on Twitter and see all of the reaction that it garners. What I leave out, what's the spread?
Okay, so here we go. The spread is 17 points.
Okay.
Does A&M cover? And I've got one more bet for us this week after we pick our spread.
Oh, look
Zach?
at that. I think A&M covers this week. I did not think they would cover last week, and save from a couple of doinks off the goalpost, I would have won that. Mm-hmm. But no, I think they cover the 17 this week.
I was watching Scott Van Pelt's Sports Center, and on Bad Beats, that was what was led with was the A&M Kent State kicker missing
shot. It should be
missing two of them.
As it should be. I think, Alex, to go back to our prop bet last week was who would score the first touchdown. I don't think anyone picked that one right? Correct?
I think I technically got it right, but not really.
He said Haynes King,
yes.
which was not with his legs. He meant throwing, so he didn't say who.
I picked that A&M would cover, so
there you go.
Okay, Zach or Travis, who you got?
I think A&M will cover. What's the prop bet? Did we get there yet? I think A&M will cover.
I pick A&M to cover too. Okay. I'll throw two. One, does Colorado rush for 200 yards? Because A&M allowed over 200 last week, and Colorado seems like they're going to be a run-oriented offense. Also, does Ralphie run?
Colorado ran for 281 yards in their first one. Top in the Pac-12. Yeah, I think they run for over 200 yards, but I don't think they get much passing yardage. And I still don't think that. I mean, it can be pretty easy to run for 200 yards if that's all you're doing in a game. Yeah, I think they do, but I don't think they get over 300 total yards. Or if they do, I don't think they get over 350 total yards. Is my call. And well, I feel like we have a little bit of insider trading on this. I think because for those listening, we actually recorded the second segment before this, so you'll understand what we're saying when you listen to that. Yeah, I think Ralphie runs. I don't see why not. They might not run in front of the team like I believe Coach was saying last week. You know, they had a whole big thing where because not to spook young new Ralphie kind of ran on her own away from the team. So yes, Ralphie runs, but not in front of the team as normally is custom. And Zach, you'll get this reference. I just wish it was Jim Knox that was running Ralphie.
I do wish it was Jim Knox. What is Knoxy up to these days? You see if he wants to come on the podcast. That would be an amazing get. So yeah, I'm gonna agree, since apparently y'all have some insider information on that. I love to take my hot tips that Ralphie indeed will run. But I do not believe that I do not believe that Colorado runs for 200 yards.
There you go.
I'm actually thinking it's going to be around 185, somewhere around in that
There
vicinity.
you go. Book it.
I'm going to say no to both. I'm going to say Colorado does not run for 200 yards, and for some reason, Ralphie will not run. Although I hope she does, because that would be a beautiful sight to see.
There you
a
go.
Majestic buffalo.
That majestic buffalo in majestic Denver. That's where A&M will be this weekend, and probably a lot of you will too. So thanks everyone for listening. This is another. Well, no, this isn't. This is the first segment, even though we've done it the second one.
Yeah,
so we'll just go ahead and say, stay tuned. Thanks for listening to this first segment, but stay tuned for the second segment where we'll have Buffalo Daily Camera reporter Brian Howell on to break down a little bit of what's been going on with Colorado this season. And he offers at least one tip of a place to eat in Denver if you're heading up there. So that's next on the My Aggie Nation podcast. What's going on, everyone? I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle. We're here for either a second segment of the My Aggie Nation podcast, another Aggie Sports Zoom hangout. I'm here with Alex Miller of the Eagle, Robert Cessna of the Eagle, and our special guest today is Brian Howell of the Boulder Daily Camera. He covers Colorado up there, A&M's opponent this weekend. Brian, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys? Thanks for having me on.
Doing well. Well, let's just start off. What are the biggest storylines? What are the things that you're focusing in on coming into this game this weekend with Texas A&M as far as the Buffaloes go?
Well, first thing is whether they can hang with A&M. You know, it's this is a program that's obviously building at Colorado, and they're not quite at the level that A&M is at right now. And so the big question mark is, whether they can hang with them or not. And to do that, it's can they handle the Aggies in the trenches? Can they run the football? Can they stop the run? And I think those are two of the big questions to be answered. And if they can do those things, they can play in this game and maybe win this game.
I was wondering, what did you take from Colorado's win last week? A lot of times, like A&M play Kent State, what do you get out of it? Being a beat writer, what did you like? What concerns do you have moving forward for Buffalo from that game?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a 28-point win, and there's still a lot of complaints about it because it's an FCS team. It's a kind of a lower level Big Sky team, but you look around the country and see Washington loses to Montana. You see some other teams struggle with FCS teams that it wasn't so bad. But basically, what I took out of it was the Buffs got what they needed, which was a win going away where they got to get in some young players and play some depth and didn't have any major injuries. And they didn't have to show a whole lot on film. So they really pretty much got what they wanted to do. A lot of discipline problems, 12 penalties, a lot of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties that need to get cleaned up. And, the quarterback, Brendan Lewis, played his first start and was a little, he was okay. It wasn't great and they needed to be better. So lots of things to take from it, but really it was just get out of there with a win and move on to A&M.
They have a lot of guys reading some of your stuff. They have a lot of guys, Colorado does, that seemingly are kind of making their comeback from some long-term injuries this season, and some guys who are making a difference. Who are some of those guys, and what have you seen from them so far?
Yeah, top of the list is Nate Lamb, the linebacker, who played most of last year, but tore his Achilles in the last regular season game and was not available for the Alamo Bowl against Texas. And he tore his Achilles 9 months ago, and he was back playing just this last week, and he looks great. Had 4 tackles and some impact plays, so he leads the way. They have a safety, Chris Miller, that has just been plagued with injuries throughout his career, but he looked good in the opener the other day. And they've got an offensive tackle that we won't see this week, I don't think, Frank Phillip, that he's been out a little bit. So several guys come back from injuries, not only this year, but just kind of they've been plagued by injuries throughout their career, and they're hoping to stay healthy. So the Buffs have certainly dealt with some injuries on there. Alex Fontenot was another one, actually, a running back from the Dallas area that led their team in rushing in 2019 and missed all of last year with a hip injury. And he came back and scored a touchdown last week.
Reading all the season previews from Colorado, two things came out from everybody's positive this time of the year, but more depth and more talent. Is that the case? Do you feel, and how much more than, let's say, when Darrell took over?
Yeah, they're building. I mean, it's Darrell's just kind of building upon what Mel Tucker started. Mel Tucker was here for about 5 minutes, so it didn't he didn't have a chance to really do much. But uh, really, I mean, Mike McIntyre started doing a solid job towards the end of his tenure with recruiting. Mel Tucker took that to another level, and Darrell's kind of building upon that. And this team is so much deeper than it was, 6, 7 years ago when they were just starting out in the Pac-12. It's a lot deeper, but they still got a long ways to go. I mean, the talent level is not quite what it is, like we saw in the Alamo Bowl against Texas. It's not going to be the same as it's going to be this week with A&M. So they're still building, but it is much better.
What about looking at the matchups? A&M gave up a lot of yards rushing last week, which was kind of uncommon for them, considering the opponent. Even though they'd run the ball well last year, it was the Mid-American. I noticed Colorado had like 4 or 5 guys last week with at least 30 yards. Some of those names guys are back. Is this a matchup that Colorado has to win, or at least hold their own, to have a chance to make this a competitive game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Colorado's running game is kind of its bread and butter on offense, especially with their quarterback being a freshman that's just getting started. So they believe this is the deepest running back room they've had in almost 20 years. And Jarek Broussard was the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year last year. Alex Fontenot, like I mentioned, led the team in rushing 2 years ago and is back. Ashad Clayton was a 4-star recruit in the 2020 class. Deion Smith is another kid that he missed all last year with injury. He scored a touchdown the other day. So they rushed for 281 last week. Brendan Lewis, the quarterback, ran for 44. So they'll get some yards from him. If they can get close to or around 200 yards, that's going to be a huge thing for this team. If they can't run the ball at all, just forget it. They're not going to win this game.
Do they run power, or do they spread it out? The quarterback from Kent State even hurt A&M a little bit last week with his week. So what does their formations look like?
Yeah, it's really more straightforward running. I mean, not a lot of fullback, but it's a lot of between the tackles types of runs. Brendan Lewis will gain his yards, really kind of scrambling and kind of make some plays with his feet. They didn't do a lot of read option, anything like that. I don't know if they'll show that against A&M, but they'll do some power stuff in short yardage situations. But typically, it's between the tackles and one back.
Something that I'm interested in, A&M replaced 4 offensive linemen from last year coming into this year. Kent State's defensive fronts, they got a little bit on them, but this is the test I was looking for first for A&M's offensive line. What is the kind of matchup they'll be facing with the defensive line and the defensive front of Colorado?
Yeah, the starters are pretty good. There's not a whole lot of depth with CU's defensive line, but Jalen Sami is a nose tackle that's pretty good. He had a couple TFLs last week. Naeem Rodman's pretty good. Terrence Lang, Janice Jordan is another one that's got some starting experience. That foursome is pretty good, and they can give A&M some fits there, and at least a test up there. But they don't have a whole lot of depth. A lot of freshmen beyond that 4, so we'll see how deep they go in the rotation. But that group can do a pretty good job and hold its own.
And then A&M's had 4 turnovers in the game this last week, 3 of them from quarterback Haynes King, 4 interceptions. What's kind of the ball hawking ability of Colorado's secondary? How have they been in forcing turnovers lately? Because that could be a differentiation in a game like this with a young quarterback.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen Colorado, really force a lot of turnovers in the secondary. I mean, they had a group in 2016 when they won the Pac-12 South that was really good at it, but they haven't been great since then. They did have an interception in the end zone last week on an overthrown ball, but really, it's not a lot of interceptions from this group. They've got to get better at it, and that might be one area where Texas A&M could see some improvement from last week because Colorado just has not shown that ability to really take a lot of turnovers from the opposition.
So does that mean, are they a read and react defense? Don't bring as much pressure. Hope for you guys, other team, to make a mistake, bend not break. What kind of defense are we looking at?
They mix it up a lot. I mean, there is a lot of read and react, but they do have some guys that can bring pressure. I mean, Carson Wells, an outside linebacker, he led the country in TFLs per game last year, so he's really good. Nate Lamon, he's going to get in the backfield quite a bit, but they kind of go off of their defense. They say they're going to go off of kind of what the opposition shows. So it can look different week to week and multiple fronts. And I mean, they've been 3-4 for several years, and then all of a sudden their preseason depth chart shows a 4-3. And it was like, well, okay, that's that kind of surprised me. And then they start off, with a two-man front. So they're going to mix it up a lot. You'll see a lot of different things on that defense.
Ryan, this is a neutral site game, but just down the road from, Boulder, what kind of environment are you kind of expecting, even though it's a neutral site game? And is this a game that, Colorado fans in the Denver area will go to? Seems like it's kind of a destination trip for a lot of A&M fans.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's been a topic of discussion here that the ticket sales really aren't going that well. I think they're much less than what CU anticipated. I mean, the Broncos Stadium holds 76,000 fans, and as of yesterday, their sports information department sent out an email to the writers saying, "Hey, would you guys mind sending this link out for people to buy tickets?" There are 53,000 tickets sold, so that's 23,000 seats that are unsold just a few days before the game. And actually, CU just announced right before I jumped on here, I saw they're giving free tickets away to first responders, which is a nice gesture, especially on September 11th. But I think it also speaks to the fact that they've got a lot of tickets they're not sold. So it's not a high. CU doesn't get a lot of attention around here. This is a Broncos town first and foremost, and everybody else plays second fiddle there, and so it's not a highly anticipated game apparently. Just based off the ticket sales. A lot of CU fans wish this was in Boulder.
Yeah, is we talking a lot more price for a Denver ticket versus if it had been at Boulder?
I honestly don't know because I haven't looked at the price. Excuse me, I haven't looked at the prices. I have heard that from fans that it seems like it's a lot more than it has been. One thing I know a few fans are disappointed in is CU did not include it in its season ticket package, and so
Yeah.
some season ticket holders are a little bit disappointed in that. One of the reasons they did that is because whenever they've played in Denver in the past, it's always CSU, but a lot of season ticket holders opt out of that game. So they decided, well, let's just not make it part of the package this year. And so I think that could be part of it. But it's interesting. I thought for sure this game would be well over 60,000 seats. So I never thought it'd be sold out, but I thought it would, get to 65, 70. But, I don't think we're going to get there.
I'm interested because A&M is traveling. What's the COVID protocol out there in your area? Just, COVID update, because we're in our little foxhole here, so to speak, in Texas. This is A&M's first road trip. What can we expect COVID-wise in the Denver area?
Yeah, a lot of I think like a lot of places in the masks aren't really required indoors, but it's like recommended a lot of places indoors. It doesn't. I don't think that they're recommend or required at the stadium. I think because it's outdoors, it's quote strongly recommended. But it was last week too, and there weren't a lot of fans wearing their masks at Folsom Field. So not a lot of mask requirements, but there are some restaurants in Denver downtown Denver that will require a mask when you're not eating. So kind of be aware of that.
So what's going to be a successful game for Colorado?
Well, obviously, if they can somehow win it, that'd be monumental for this program. But to me, I think if they can, keep this within a couple touchdowns, that's a successful game. It's sort of telling that. They obviously all want to win them, but in a press conference this week, Carl Durrell mentioned that, hey, this is kind of a measuring stick game for us, and this is a game that we want to be in these types of games in the future. That's kind of saying to me, we know we're not at that level yet, but we want to at least hold our own and prove that we can maybe get there at some point. So I think the Buffs are realistic, and they maybe won't come out and say it. I think they're realistic in that they're not at A&M's level, but sometimes teams pull upsets, and I think that if the ball goes the right way, they can get some turnovers. They can pull an upset. They're capable of doing it. I just think straight up that that A&M is on a different level than they are.
I think the question that all the fans who are going to attend this game want to know: will Ralphie run?
I think so. I should have been prepared for that one. I don't know for a fact if she is, but I think she is running.
And what's for people who don't know? I know they're breaking in a new Ralphie. What's kind of the backstory on that and the much smaller Ralphie they have right now?
Yeah, so Ralphie 5, was the mascot for about 12 years, and around the middle of the 2019 season, she just decided I'm not going to run anymore, and they couldn't really control her as much anymore, and they deemed it wasn't safe, so she didn't run the last 3 games of that year, and they've kind of been searching for a new Buffalo, and you can't just force a Buffalo to be Ralphie. You've got to work with them, and they've got to, as the handlers always tell me, Ralphie will let us know that she can be Ralphie. So they've gone through what I heard 4 different buffalo trying to find this one, and it's about a 15-month-old buffalo, which is pretty young. I think it's the youngest one they've ever had, at least going back to Ralphie Run in the 60s, and she's only about 500 pounds, whereas when she gets older, she'll be about 1,300 pounds. So she looks pretty little now. It's still a 500-pound animal, though. So, and she had a couple pretty good runs last week in her debut, so it looked pretty good.
I'll stick away from her. But one question I wonder is, you always worry about a coach and a fit. Darrell, had one good year at UCLA, went off to the NFL. Do the people out there feel Darrell's a good fit for the Colorado program? Because I know you mentioned they've gone through a few coaches here in the last decade.
Yeah, initially there was a lot of, geez, who is this guy? I mean, CU fans knew of him because he had been with the Broncos. He had been an assistant with CU before, but it was really shocking that when his name came up, he was not on anybody's radar during that job search until we found out he was the guy, and it was like, whoa, okay. So initially it was kind of a weird one, but he did go to 5 bowls in 5 years at UCLA. He's now gone to 1 bowl in 1 year at CU. So he's taken teams to bowl games every year of his career in college. So give him credit for that. He has really, the fan or the players have really taken to him, really bought into him. And because of that, I think the fans have bought into him and they're really behind him. So I think they're much more on board with Darrell than maybe they were 18 months ago when he got hired.
Brian, I'm a big food guy. That's kind of my bit here on the show. Where are maybe a couple of can't miss places in Denver for A&M fans traveling to the game, and us too?
Yeah,
you can eat with Ralphie.
Yeah, eat with Ralphie. It's funny because I live outside of Denver, so people always ask me this stuff, and I'm never prepared for it because I don't eat in Denver very often. However, there is a place, I'm going to plug this one, and I'm not affiliated with this place, but I've been there a lot, and I know it's a big CU guy that runs the place. But Blake Street Tavern is pretty good over by Coors Field. It's a really good sports bar. It's a place, especially if you get in Friday. Friday night you can go watch some sports. They got TVs all over the place. That'd be a really good place. There's some good, sports bars in the Denver area. Just lots of places downtown to go to. So if you head anywhere downtown near the stadium, you'll find a good spot.
Cease, you got anything else?
I think he did a pretty good job there.
Let's go with usually the question you close out with. What are some of the keys to the game for Colorado to be able to have a successful day?
Yeah, you got to run the football. They have to run the football. If they don't, they're in trouble. They've got to stop the run, and I think A&M's going to get its yards, but they've got to limit what A&M's impact is on the ground. They've got to force turnovers and take advantage of mistakes that A&M makes and try to force them into some. And then CU's got to avoid mistakes, and they got to play a clean football game.
All right. Well, before we let you go, thanks so much for your time. Why don't you let everyone know the best way to find your stuff to read to get ready for the game this weekend?
Yeah, you can find our stuff at buffzone.com and follow me on Twitter at Brian Howell 33, and we'll have a lot of stuff coming up prior to the game and afterwards.
That is Brian Howell of the Boulder Daily Camera. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you all for watching this video and also the My Aggie Nation podcast. For Alex Miller, Robert Sesta, I'm Travis Brown, and we'll see you next week.
It seems like every day, everything just has a way to burst at the seams. But if we don't watch what we're doing, our hearts will get ruined by silly things. Good love ain't easy, girl, we know that's true. And if we wanna keep it, we gotta watch everything that we do, yeah. Don't wanna make sure, my baby, make sure you're sticking with me. Don't wanna make sure